Hi, I'm Sean Luce, Technical Marketing Engineer for Azure NetApp Files. And in this video, I'll be showing you how to use the Azure NetApp Files data store for Azure VMware Solution TCO Estimator. This tool will help you understand the total cost of ownership of an AVS solution and how you can save some money by taking advantage of Azure NetApp Files data stores to extend the storage capacity of your AVS environment without additional AVS hosts. To assist, I'll be joined today by Principal Cloud Architect Phoebe Go. She is currently working with a customer that has some data center modernization challenges and they need to move some VMware workloads into Azure. Let's give her a call and see what's up.
Hey, Sean, thanks for calling back.
Hey Phoebe, I heard you're working on an AVS opportunity. Why don't you tell me a little about it?
Yeah, sure. So I have a customer with a pretty big VMware environment. They're trying to get out of their data center. In fact, they'd like to evacuate in a couple of months so they don't have a lot of time to re-architect and redesign things. They gave me some rough estimates of their VMware environment today, and I'd like to go through them with you to get some idea of TCO. I've also asked them for an RV Tools report, but they said that might take a bit of time. So I was hoping you could take me through it and help me out with giving them a good TCO.
No problem at all. We can take the information that you have so far, plug it into the calculator, and see what we come up with.
Excellent. Well, here's their environment on a slide as they've told me. They believe they have somewhere between 500 and 600 virtual machines. They've estimated about 2 vCPUs and 8 gigs of RAM per VM, and they think it's probably an average of 600 gigabytes of storage per VM, but they're not really sure right now how that's going to look. It might be a lot bigger than that. They'd really like to get out of their data center and completely and be efficient when they do it. And the biggest concern that they have right now is they've heard that it could be expensive. So I'm hoping that we can give them some clarity on sizing and TCO with your calculator.
This is great stuff, Phoebe. Let's enter this information into the TCO estimator and get an idea of what their total cost will be. So here we are at the TCO estimator. As you can see in this top section, we have our inputs. We can select a region and all costs will be calculated based on the region we select. Next, we can enter the information we received from the customer. The number of virtual machines, number of vCPUs per physical core, the average number of vCPUs per virtual machine, the average amount of VRAM allocated to each virtual machine, and finally the amount of utilized storage per virtual machine. The estimator will calculate the number of AVS hosts needed based on these inputs and also tell us if there are any savings to be had by introducing ANF data stores. We can improve the accuracy of these calculations by adjusting the number of virtual network gateways and also adjusting the vSAN assumptions. Here, we can adjust the slack space, on-disk format, storage policy, and even adjust the dedupe and compression rate. For the dedupe and compression rate, we have provided some of the most common rates based on typical data we see in the field. In this next section, called Sizing Decisions, we can see how many AVS hosts are required for each CPU, memory, and storage. As you can see, 8 AVS hosts are enough to meet the requirements for both CPU and memory. The remaining AVS hosts are needed only to meet the storage requirements. Next, let's take a look at the projected savings if we introduce Azure NetApp Files data stores. We have a nice visual representation of the savings based on each of the 3 ANF performance tiers: Ultra, Premium, and Standard. Here, in the table at the top, we show how many additional hosts would be required to meet the storage capacity of the environment, the amount of ANF storage needed to optimize, the annual TCO of the additional vSAN nodes needed to meet the storage requirements, the annual TCO of the ANF data stores needed to meet the storage requirements, and finally, the savings realized if we choose to optimize with Azure NetApp Files. Below the graph area, there are some additional options to further customize the calculations. We can select between different AVS host types, different AVS savings options, pay as you go, 1 year and 3 year reserved instances, and finally, we can also modify the estimated discount for ANF. It is important to note that this tool is for estimation purposes only, and your actual costs may vary depending on the discount programs available. In this last section, we have a table showing the detailed calculations. In this first row, we show the calculations if you decide to run the entire environment on only vSAN. Below that, we show the calculations if you choose a combination of vSAN and Azure NetApp Files. Notice there is a row for each of the ANF performance tiers, as well as optional rows that show calculations if you were to split the workload across multiple ANF service levels. Lastly, we have a row showing the details if you are choosing to use AVS as a disaster recovery solution. In this case, only the minimum cluster size is needed. More on that later. Let's summarize the results of the TCO estimator. If they were to use vSAN only, they would need 41 AVS hosts to accommodate this workload. We can reduce that host count down to 8 if we add some ANF data stores. As you can see, there are some pretty significant savings to be had. We can save this customer almost $1 million annually if they choose the Azure NetApp Files standard tier.
Hey, that's great. One question, what if it turns out that standard tier isn't performant enough for their apps?
That's no problem at all. They can move ANF data stores around to different performance tiers non-disruptively and find that sweet spot between performance and cost, or as application requirements change.
Awesome, awesome. So they can start on standard and adjust as needed without any disruption. That sounds perfect. Oh, hey, I just got that email from the customer. They got the RV Tools report done. Turns out it was pretty easy after all.
That is great news. Using the RV Tools data will give us a more accurate estimate. Send that over and we'll import it into the TCO estimator.
Great, it's on its way.
Okay, great. I got your email. Now let's head back to the TCO estimator and import that RV Tools file. Notice here at the top there is an option to import RV Tools file. We'll select that and we are given a field where we can upload that file. We'll browse for the RV Tools file and select Open. The TCO estimator parses all of that RV Tools data and provides a summary. There are also some options that can be used to further control this data. By default, we are only considering powered on virtual machines, utilized storage, and utilized memory. You can override these defaults to consider powered off and suspended virtual machines, as well as provisioned storage and memory. And once again, the same options are provided to further tweak the calculations by providing the number of virtual network gateways and adjusting the vSAN assumptions. And just like the manual input method, we are presented with a summary of the projected savings as well as the detailed calculations. So with this updated information, the savings are even better than we initially thought. Based on the RV Tools data, we can see that 82 AVS hosts would be required if they chose to migrate to AVS with vSAN only. And by introducing ANF data stores, we can bring that host count down to only 14, with an annual savings of nearly $2 million. Phoebe, what do you think?
Wow, that is awesome. I think they are going to be pleasantly surprised. Look, they also mentioned that they have a second site that doesn't have a disaster recovery solution. Do you think that we could help them with that as well?
Absolutely. Did they provide you with any details of the VMware environment at that second site?
Yes, they did. It isn't as storage heavy as the primary site, but if we could show them some savings, I think they would love it. So here's the information they gave me for the secondary site. They'd like it to run in north central US and for it to be a disaster recovery environment for a data center that they still want to run. Their biggest concerns here is just that they don't want those nodes sitting idle because it's going to cost them so much. So they'd rather have them running as a minimal config as possible. And I was thinking after you showed me the last config that they might save some money on this with ANF as well. So could you walk me through the TCO?
No problem at all. Let's head back over to the TCO estimator and build out a new config. First, let's select North Central US from the region selector in the top right corner. Next, let's enter in the information they provided. 500 virtual machines, 3 vCPUs per physical core, 4 vCPUs per VM, 8 gigs of memory, and 400 gigs of storage. Let's also switch the AVS host type to AV36P. For this scenario, we'll go straight to the calculations. If they were to use vSAN only for this disaster recovery site, they would be looking at 23 AVS hosts with an annual TCO of nearly $1 million. And because this is a disaster recovery site, those nodes would be sitting idle until there was a disaster. However, if we reduce that node count down to the minimum of 3 and add ANF data stores to provide additional storage, we can reduce the annual TCO down to only $434,000 per year. When disaster strikes, the customer can simply add more AVS hosts and be up and running within a few hours. Okay, Phoebe. So to summarize, we can absolutely use AVS as a disaster recovery site. And because the virtual machines don't need to be running until there is a disaster, we can set them up with the minimum cluster size of only 3 AVS hosts and augment the remaining capacity requirement with ANF data stores, reducing their annual cost by about $500K, more than 50%.
Wow, this is awesome. I know that not only are their procurement guys going to be happy, their sustainability officer is going to love this as well. Thank you so much for walking me through this. I'm going to bring these numbers back to them and I'll let you know how it goes.
You are very welcome, Phoebe. Happy to help and good luck.
I don't think I'll need it. Thanks again.
Scan the QR code below to check out the Azure NetApp Files data store for Azure VMware Solution TCO Estimator. Thanks for watching.